So it has been my custom since I've been here to give my annual address now. So this is not a sermon, although it's probably a teaching. I guess I would call it that. You know, the first epistle to the Corinthians was written in part because of divisions that were occurring in that congregation, in that church. The divisions centering over the gifts of the Spirit and whether one gift of the Spirit was more holy than another gift, and whether that made someone more holy than someone else. And that was just a sign of times to come. That division, unfortunately, would continue to mar Christian churches. And, as today, I don't think it's any surprise to say that polarization is quickly becoming the norm of discourse in our country. From politics and religion, civic life, to family life. It seems that we are increasingly losing our way, or our ability to express what we think and what we feel in ways that don't rip another person apart, and indeed express it in ways that maintain love and fellowship between human beings. This was brought home to me again in a recent meeting of the primates of the Anglican Communion. Now I have to explain the word primates. Not all of you have been Episcopalian for a long time. It's an unfortunate word. It's spelled primates when it refers to the chief bishop of a province in the Anglican Communion. It is pronounced primates. If it were up to me, I'd find another word. Anyway, I will leave it to you to Google what went on with the primates. It's been all over Facebook. Bishops have come out with their responses to the meeting of the primates. For my purposes, what I want to point out is that, at least in my news feed on Facebook, there appeared sometimes some very reasoned and thoughtful responses to what happened with the meeting of the primates in England this month, but others were not so charitable. There's something about social media that gives us license somehow to escalate conflict without the risk of accountability, without having the real, uncomfortableness of a face-to-face meeting with another person. Conflict, by the way, means face-to-face. Now, the news of the primates was spun in all kinds of ways, and when this kind of thing happens, at least human beings, of which Episcopalians count themselves, will feel pain. Now, there's a certain part of our brain called the amygdala that is responsible for remembering pain and its circumstances. It is an unthinking, non-rational part of our brain. It is the part of our brain when we are confronted with conflict or confronted with the possibility of pain, alerts our nervous system to do fight or flight. Now, because it's unthinking, because it's non-rational, it can lead us to do things that in hindsight we might have wished we hadn't done. It's not that we can't think our way through the urge to fight or flight. The problem is that the amygdala can be so powerful. It's often called, by the way, the reptilian brain. It can be so powerful that it can lead us to instantly fight. And that can lead us to say things that are difficult or impossible to take back. Inexcusably unchristian behavior can result. And our witness to the love of Jesus Christ, who prayed for his Father to forgive his executioners, is irreparably harmed. The flight response is no better. It's equally damaging, but it's a quiet killer. It destroys the relationships of Christians with whom we disagree, but nevertheless share similar passion for the ministry of Christ. It harms the local church's capacity to bring the ministry and message of Jesus to bear in the surrounding community because of lost resources of time and talent and treasure. Now, I know what it's like to feel pain. I know each and every one of you do. I know what it's like to fight over my fight-flight response. And at times I've done both, or at least wanted to do one or the other. There was a time when if I had had my way, I'd have pulled the ejection handle and got the heck out of the priesthood and the Episcopal Church, simply because of conflict in the local parish. But what gets my fight up, you might want to know? Creedal orthodoxy. The Nicene Creed does not say all that can and needs to be said about God, but it says this: God has no identity apart from Jesus Christ. Our knowledge of God is not whimsical, it is not abstract. We know God in and through Jesus Christ, His Son. Jesus is Lord, and that is non-negotiable. You've heard me say in a recent sermon that I'm a hopeful universalist. I believe that God's intent for salvation is the salvation of the whole creation through His Son Jesus. How that works in the lives of particular human beings, I don't know. I don't need to know, because God said that's how it works. God has said His will for salvation is the whole world. Whatever else the Bible teaches, it says that in the end, God gets His way. The way He wants it and how He wants it. I mean, really, seriously, for me, Jesus is it. To the extent that I have a banner to wave, an issue to a bully pulpit to pound, it's about Jesus. He is at the center of the incarnation, the atonement, the resurrection, the ascension and Pentecost and second coming. They are all about one person, Jesus Christ. The doctrine of the Trinity is the direct, logical, and theologically coherent result of those six doctrines. He lives now as Lord of all creation, despite appearances sometimes, and through the Spirit we can know and be known by Him, transformed by His self-sacrificing love, and empowered to do more than we can ask or imagine. So we find ourselves as the church living in a crisis of polarization and fear permeating all levels of society, from religion, politics, civic life, and home life. And this polarization comes across and came about in reaction to the primates meeting and social media. That's what I saw. We have to rise to meet the challenge of polarization in our world. It's not just about the primates meeting, it's about all of it. And I'm going to lay out how it can be done. It's not going to be easy. Like I said, polarization occurs when we have conflicts of values. Conflicts of values are extremely difficult to manage because values, by definition, are non-negotiable. And there are only three responses to a values conflict: fight, flight, or discover a higher shared value and make the higher shared value the new foundation upon which mutual respect, mutual ministry, and even genuine love for one another can be built. I submit to you that the highest value of all is Jesus Himself. The Jesus of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He alone has the name above all names. He alone transforms the hearts to His truth. He alone loves with healing love. His love heals the deep wounds we carry. His love dispels our fears of rejection, our fears of being alone. His love meets our bottomless need to be needed. His love defines me, who I am, what my purpose is as a priest, as a man, and as a husband, as a father, is in the love of Jesus Christ and nowhere else. Now, values should not be abstract. They are the launching point for action in our daily life. So just saying that Jesus is our highest value isn't enough. We have to articulate our values in a way that roots them in the person of Jesus while propelling us into action. And I want to suggest that there are 4 core values that must define life at Christ Church. In many ways, they already do. I believe that these are the kind of values that turn congregations into beacons of love and safety in a world of fear and polarization. And they are passionate and joyous worship of God, love for the searching and the hurting, a commitment to one another, and a willingness to do what it takes to follow Jesus as Lord. Passionate and joyous worship of God. Worship, as the French would say, is our raison d'etre, our reason for being. It's why we exist. If the church were a business, worship would be our product. Now note that I didn't say one of our values was perfect worship. I love liturgy. I love it when it's done well. And the more attention that's given to it, to doing it well, the better it gets. But passion and joy cover a host of liturgical sin. It is far more important that we bring passion and joy to our praise of God. Because after all, our God is a God of joy. He overflows with joy for you. Now, I celebrated my 29th anniversary of the priesthood this month on the 12th. And in all my years, I can honestly say that Christ Church has the most joyous worship of any place I've ever been. And it's passionate. Worship is the beating heart of every congregation. Show me a church with humdrum worship, and I will show you a church whose ministries are done by rote. Passionate and joyous worship of God. A heart for the searching and the hurting. It seems to me that that captures the gamut of Jesus' ministry on earth. From the Samaritan woman searching for acceptance, Nicodemus searching for the Messiah, to those who are hurting from blindness, from deafness, hunger, and nakedness. Our hearts need to reach out to those unfamiliar faces in worship, making sure that they have everything that they need to give passionate and joyous worship to God. To those who are hurt from illness or crushed by loss, we have prayer teams ready to bring the power of the Holy Spirit to bear in their lives. To those hurting from hunger, we come together to feed them through the food pantry, Thanksgiving meals, and helping other ministries like Caring for Kids that provides weekend lunches to children whose only sure lunch is the one they get at school. Commitment to one another. This is perhaps the hardest value to live into, but it is a command of Jesus Christ himself that we love one another. It is true that most often we hurt the ones we love the most, and no group of people can promise that they won't hurt and misunderstand each other. Commitment is not the absence of misunderstanding or disagreement, but it is the pledge we make in the midst of it. The Book of Common Prayer, I think, explains this perfectly in the marriage service. Give them grace when they hurt each other, not if, but when they hurt each other, to recognize and acknowledge their fault, and to seek each other's forgiveness and yours. Commitment to one another. And finally, a willingness to do what it takes to follow Jesus Christ as Lord. Living the values of Christ Jesus in our worship, our love of neighbor, our commitment to one another is the best kind of evangelism. Again, the marriage service sums it up this way. Regarding marriage, which could easily just as well point to this church and this congregation, make their life together a sign of Christ's love to this sinful and broken world, that unity may overcome estrangement, forgiveness heal guilt, joy conquer despair. Passionate and joyous worship of God, love for the searching and the hurting, commitment to one another, and a willingness to do what it takes to follow Jesus as Lord. These values are the sign of Christ's love to this sinful and broken and polarized world. And that is what gives them power to unite people from all walks of life around one table. We are called to live these values so that we can be a beacon, a lighthouse to a society marred by hatred and fear and polarization. You will never find a place where people don't strongly disagree. You will never find a place where people share all your values. But we know there is a higher value, the highest one. And his name is Jesus. And in him we are one. Amen.